childlike writing on the wall, no matter what kind of paint they used to cover it. So I had a client a few years ago, or remember, I don't know a lot about these folks ahead of time. All I knew is that they didn't feel like they were alone in the house and that they said they were experiencing, quote, physical symptoms, but I didn't really know what that meant. I don't like to know anything ahead of time. I want to be able to just go and see what I see. So I later learned a little backstory to this that I'm going to explain up front. Apparently, the husband bought the wife the house before they got married, and it was given to her as a wedding gift. So they moved into it after they got married, hadn't lived there together before, and they realized right away that they were not the only people in the house. Noticed writing on a bedroom wall upstairs. They painted over it, but around that same time, they started hearing children's footsteps on the upper floor. And then they would hear children like laughing and giggling. And a couple of times it was so loud that they actually went upstairs because they thought maybe neighbor kids had gotten into the house. So years passed. They'd gotten to where they didn't even paint over the writing anymore. They had finally used kills to paint over it, and it just wouldn't go away. So they gave up. It was localized. It was in certain areas of the house. So it was more of a distraction and an annoyance than anything that was really aggressive or that they felt threatened by, until they had children. They had a couple of children, and the children didn't sleep well. They shared a room. And when the oldest child got to the point that she was capable of verbalizing, she would talk about how the kids in the room were keeping her awake at night. And so they finally contacted me. The writing on the wall then became localized to just the children's room, which did sort of feel a little threatening to them. Normally, when we're called to do something like this, we end up where we like sort of come out of the meditation is wherever the like focus of the energy is. In this situation, we ended up in the front yard. And when that happens, unless it's a property clearing where I'm there to look at the whole property, that indicates to me that there's a bigger picture issue going on in the area. So I kind of just stood there to see where I was pulled, and I kept feeling this part of the front yard. I can't remember if it was the left or the right, but feeling pulled to this part of the front yard where I could feel there were big things buried there. Like I thought they were humans. And I'm like, oh my God, there's like murdered people in their front yard. So we go inside, and the instant we walk in the door, these two little girls run down the stairs. But I feel like it's a distraction. Like they're not why we're there. And I'm also feeling really distracted and torn. Like I'm having a really hard time focusing. I'm starting to get a headache, which is weird because I don't usually have physical symptoms when I'm doing that. I just didn't feel right. It felt really chaotic. And we kept running into weird things, like things that felt like we were being misdirected so that we couldn't actually see what was really going on. It was just chaos. So I'm asking my guide, well, what are we here for? I'm not seeing anything obvious that we need to get rid of. He's not really saying anything. So I leave the meditation, and the next morning I send the client an email and just say, hey, here's what we found. I'm not really seeing anything. Do you know what's going on in your front yard? I'm also feeling when I was in your house, I felt really distracted, like I was having a hard time focusing, and there's all this weird chaotic like energy. Do you know anything? Can you shed any light on this? And they immediately respond with, that's exactly how we feel in the house. We can't get anything done. I feel like I start a project and I've got 50 million projects started and I can't focus enough to finish any of them. The issue is we have seen the little girls in the house, but we don't really know what's going on the property. But we have found animals buried all over our property. And what we think in the area that you pointed out in the front yard, we think that's horses, that there are horses buried in the front yard. So yay, not humans, not murdered humans, but you know, I can't make this shit up. So we go back the next night and cross over the little girls who I think were the ones that were keeping her awake. Whatever other dead, it was just sort of this weird chaotic energy that was in there, and finally treated it like a poltergeist. So like I've mentioned, poltergeists are not quote unquote evil, regardless of what you've seen on TV. They're the concentrated energy of living humans. Think big marital fights, or temperamental teenagers, or mental illness or depression or chronic illness, something where you have lots of intense feeling, and it just sort of congeals, not into, I don't want to call it an entity because it doesn't really have consciousness, but it definitely has form. It has a form, and it can become very physically disruptive. They have the capability of moving things. So what PK manifestation stands for, psychokinetic. Um, but so we dealt with that. We crossed over the little girls. The last time I talked to them, they were no longer having those issues. The chaotic feeling in the house has subsided. I believe we did work with them for a while because they do have gifted children, children who can see the dead and are conscious of that. Sometimes need a little bit of help if they are not seeing the same thing or experiencing it, don't really know how to deal with their kids. So having somebody to work with them can be really important, having been a child like that myself. So, yeah, apparently it worked, and the weird chaotic energy was gone. The laughing and the writing on the wall stopped, and can't make this stuff up, man.